Ancient Rome, the Eternal City, a beacon of Western civilization, home to gladiators, emperors, and the Colosseum. When we think of the Roman Empire, we picture greatness. Mighty legions, aqueducts, and the Colosseum standing tall. But behind the glory lay a world of blood, corruption, and fear. A world that Rome did everything it could to hide. Today, we look beyond the marble and unveil the secrets Rome tried to bury. Gladiator games. They say that only the good die young. But in the case of the Roman gladiators, it seems that only the strong survive. Stepping into the ring wasn't a walk in the park. And these men weren't your average athletes. They were warriors in every sense, ready to spill blood and win the crowd's adoration. Picture this. The roar of the crowd echoing through the Colosseum as the gladiators lock eyes across the dusty arena. One wrong move, and it could be your last. We've all heard of gladiators, those fierce fighters who clashed in the Roman arenas. But how did they really meet their end? Well, let me tell you, it wasn't pretty. They fought with swords, spears, and even nets, until one couldn't fight anymore. The winner was celebrated with cheers, and the loser, well, they had two options. A quick death by sword or a slower death by starvation. And let me tell you, no one wanted to stick around for that second option. Political corruption and assassinations. Rome wasn't just a place of bloodshed in the arenas. It was a hotbed of betrayals and deceptions. Imagine yourself in the bustling streets of Rome where every corner could be your last. That was the reality for many politicians who got caught in the crossfire of power struggles. You never knew who to trust because everyone was out for themselves. Even close friends could turn into deadly enemies in an instant. The assassination of Julius Caesar is the most famous, perhaps because of Shakespeare's play about it, but he wasn't the only victim. Emperor Caligula, known for his debauchery and cruelty, met his end at the hands of his own grandmother, Julia Maesa. The spoiled and sadistic Nero was hated by almost everyone around him, including his own mother and wife. He was eventually beheaded at the age of 30 on the orders of his own mother. Rome was a city where trust was a luxury you couldn't afford and betrayal was a way of life. It might seem like a thing of the distant past, but it's a reminder that even in the highest levels of power, trust is hard to come by. And you should always be on guard. Who's to remembered in the Game of Thrones? If you want to play the game, you gotta play dirty. Slavery and exploitation. Now, let's talk about slavery in ancient Rome. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine yourself walking down a busy street in ancient Rome, when suddenly you hear a commotion. Looking around, you see a slave chained up, whipped, and forced to work against their will. This wasn't just a scene in a movie. It was everyday life in ancient Rome. The Romans owned millions of slaves who were treated like property. These slaves were bought and sold like products in a market, forced to work long hours for no pay. It was a brutal system, and it was accepted by everyone. But not everyone was okay with this. People like Spartacus, a warrior who led a slave rebellion, fought against the system. They wanted freedom for themselves and other slaves. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, but how bad could it have been? After all, slavery has existed in many parts of the world throughout history. Well, let me tell you, it was brutal. Slaves were often beaten, tortured, and mistreated by their owners. They had no rights and were seen as less than human. The worst part? It was completely normal. People didn't even question it. They just accepted it as part of their society. But here's the thing. Slavery didn't just affect the slaves. It also hurt the owners. It created a lot of inequality and made it hard for the society to move forward. In fact, it was one of the reasons why the Roman Empire eventually fell. So, yeah, while slavery may be a part of history, it's something we should never forget, and certainly never repeat. Moral decay and decline. Now let's talk about the downfall of Rome. Everyone knows that the empire eventually fell, but what led to its demise? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was a combination of factors that slowly weakened the empire from within. As Rome grew richer and more powerful, its citizens became lazy and careless. They spent all their time partying and having fun, instead of working and making the city better. Sound familiar? Maybe you've seen this type of behavior before in your own life. The Romans were obsessed with luxury and pleasure. They held lavish feasts, drank lots of wine, and threw extravagant parties. While there's nothing wrong with enjoying yourself, It became their main focus. They put all their energy into pleasure instead of making the city stronger and more resilient. Discipline and hard work were no longer important. It was all about living for the moment and indulging in whatever you desired. But it wasn't just the citizens. The leaders of Rome also played a part in its downfall. They became more interested in keeping their own power than serving the people. Corruption and bribery became commonplace, and the entire political system became a mess. Instead of making decisions for the good of Rome, leaders made choices that benefited them personally. They hoarded wealth and power and abused their authority. This created a lot of resentment among the people, who felt that their leaders had abandoned them. This lack of trust and cooperation eventually led to the fall of Rome. It became too divided and weak to resist outside invaders. And let's not forget about the barbarians. These fierce warriors were constantly attacking the borders of Rome. They were hungry for land and power, and they took advantage of Rome's external conflicts to do just that. Slowly but surely, the invaders chipped away at the empire until it finally collapsed. Rome's greatest enemy wasn't the barbarians at the gate. It was the darkness growing inside its own walls. Was Rome's fall inevitable? We've taken you through the blood-soaked arenas, the treacherous world of Roman politics, the brutal reality of slavery, and the decadent lifestyle that ultimately contributed to the empire's collapse. But now it's time to ask, was the fall of Rome a foregone conclusion? Could this titan of an empire have somehow managed to stay afloat? In the relentless churn of history, some events seem so monumental that we assume they were simply inevitable. The rise of Alexander, the fall of Constantinople, even the French Revolution with all its dramatic flair and earth-shattering consequences seemed destined to occur. Yet looking back at the history of ancient Rome, we can't help but wonder if its fall from grace was a fate it could have avoided. The blood and guts of the Colosseum, the venomous world of Roman politics, the haunting chains of slavery, and the soul-destroying effects of unchecked luxury. These were the internal battles that ultimately proved more fatal than any external threat. Rome didn't fall because of the barbarians at its gates. It fell because of the darkness that took root in its heart. It fell because of the indifference to the plight of the oppressed, the callousness towards fellow human beings, and the gradual erosion of values that made it great in the first place. Imagine for a moment if the leaders of Rome had shown a shred of compassion for the downtrodden, if they had addressed the gaping chasm between the ultra-rich and the dirt poor, if they had found ways to temper the unbridled lust for power and pleasure. Would things have turned out differently? It's impossible to say for sure. History has a funny way of not giving us do-overs, yet we can't help but wonder if Rome had taken a different path, if it had chosen empathy over apathy, justice over oppression, and virtue over vice. Would it still be standing tall, not just in the hearts of its people, but in the annals of world history? The fall of Rome is a stark reminder that empires are just built on military might or economic prowess. They're built on the values, ethics, and morals that guide the hearts of their citizens. It is a cautionary tale that even the greatest civilizations can crumble from within if they lose sight of what truly matters. So as we wrap up our journey through the untold stories of ancient Rome, let's take a moment to reflect on the bigger picture. Let's remember that true greatness isn't measured by power or wealth, but by compassion, equality, and justice. Thank you for joining us on this eye-opening journey through the hidden narratives of ancient Rome. We hope you've learned something new, maybe even challenged a few perspectives. If you're eager to delve deeper into more historical mysteries, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if you've got any intriguing theories or ideas you'd like to share, drop them in the comments below. Who knows, you might spark a fascinating discussion. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep discovering. The past is never as buried as we think.